There is a new world map or new world order as we call it. Energy transition is one of the many things that's happening. With the geopolitical tensions, there's a shale revolution, solar revolution, renewable energy, and also a change in the ecosystem between oil and automotives. So for energy transition in Malaysia, the government has just launched a National Energy Transition Roadmap, which we see as a very strong signal to the rakyat, the private and public sector, for the government's commitment to energy transition in Malaysia, which paradoxically we are a heavily dependent country on fossil fuel with 20% of our revenue from oil and gas through the past years. So for the energy transition roadmap, there is an allocation of 2 billion seed fund as an energy transition facility to finance the initiatives and the technology required. The National Energy Transition Roadmap that was just launched by the government stresses on the whole of nation approach that trickles down to all stakeholders as we transition. There are 6 catalytic levers with 5 cross-cutting enablers and 10 flagship projects listed under the National Energy Transition Roadmap, or NETR as we call it. We see the NETR as a strong signal to the rakyat, the private sector and the public sector on the commitment of the government to energy transition. However, there's a lot more to be done, for example, implementation, execution mechanisms, and also the facilitation of the seed funding of 25 billion ringgit allocated by the government in this. The NETR actually recognizes the current state of where Malaysia is and aims to address challenges moving forward. So we can see that about 27% of our country's revenue depends on oil and gas, and hence it is highly important that we transition in a responsible and a just way. For example, there will be 2 tracks to this. One track is to make the existing energy source as clean as possible. So that's where carbon capture, utilization storage comes in, coal gasification, and the other track is for investment into renewable energy sources to make sure we achieve our renewable energy mix by 2030. The NETR doubles down on reducing greenhouse gases intensity against GDP by 45% by 2030 compared to the 2005 baseline. Malaysia's energy sector produced almost 80% of greenhouse gases emissions, which is approximately 259 metric tons a year. This is based on 2019. Climate change poses a threat to the global economy, trade, financial system with potential losses amounting to a sizable 10 to 46% of GDP by 2050, so it will be even more expensive if we delay energy transition any longer. The EU as well introduced the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, otherwise known as CBAM, which could affect up to 57% of exports to the European Union by 2026, including players in industries such as iron, steel, aluminium, and consumer appliances. Meanwhile, the US introduced the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, which prioritizes the production and demand for domestically produced clean energy goods and services over imported ones. So these are the risks that we see as we move forward in energy transition. So the NETR identified 6 levers comprising 10 flagship catalyst projects that aim to reduce GHG emissions by at least 10 metric tons per year. The levers are divided into optimize, shift to renewables, and abate. So under optimize, we have energy efficiency. Shift to renewables include renewable energy in general, hydrogen, bioenergy, and green mobility, while abate mostly consists of carbon capture, utilization, and storage, otherwise known as CCUS. The NETR has outlined prioritization criteria for the energy transition initiatives we just spoke about. One, it would be based on the emission reduction potential. All the projects must have a measurable benefit when it comes to reducing GHG emissions to be considered impactful. Secondly, economic opportunities. Such projects shall be able to drive high-impact industries and economic activity, including micro, medium, and small enterprises, attract investments, and generate job opportunities, which is a very key factor. Third one would be cost effectiveness. There is a lot of new technology currently which requires high upfront investments. However, this must be backed by reasonable long-term yield, especially on the latest technology that are yet to be proved commercially feasible. Last but not least, social inclusiveness. Initiatives shall take into account job security, job creation, well-being, and its benefit to the rakyat and our future generations. In terms of investments, energy transition initiatives are estimated to require up to 1.85 trillion in financing by 2050. Globally, it is said to require up to 130 trillion US dollars by 2050. Hence, this is definitely an expensive transition, but the more we delay it, the more expensive it would get. The Malaysia Energy Transition Outlook estimates about 415 billion cumulative investments to be required for the 1.5 Celsius target, with a 100% RE generation scenario, which is the ideal scenario. To achieve the target of 70% RE capacity by 2050, about 637 billion in investments is required. Meanwhile, the 10 flagship projects listed in the NETR would generate about 25 billion ringgit in investments. Opportunities worth up to RM1 trillion are up for grabs, so to speak, beyond the transition to renewable energy such as smart grids, energy efficiency initiatives, technology, and energy storage solutions. Part 2 of the NETR introduces and stresses on responsible transition RT targets and expands on two critical parts of the roadmap. One being the energy transition ambition and macro position, including detailed targets to drive and guide the market. The second one being the 5 cross-cutting enablers which are relevant to Malaysia and its future outlook based on our goal. The NETR is also structured around the classic energy trilemma, the key challenge for every energy transition. The first one being security. It is the capacity to meet current and future energy demand reliably, withstand and bounce back from any system shocks with minimal disruption to the supply of energy to the rakyat and to the private sector. Second would be equity, so ability to provide universal access to reliable, affordable, and abundant energy for domestic and commercial use. And the third one being sustainability. Sustainability of energy systems represents the transition of a country's energy system towards mitigating and avoiding potential environmental harm and climate change impact. With the launch of the National Energy Transition Roadmap here at PwC, we have come up with a few key takeaways for businesses. So firstly, authenticity and the courage to be bold. We have to ensure that whatever we do in terms of sustainability when it comes to our vision and goals are authentic to be seamlessly integrated into our business strategy, practices, and culture rather than a separate add-on item. Energy transition should be at the core in building a strategy to ensure long-term sustainability, and investments that move the needle are required to create the momentum we need in the energy transition. Secondly, and very importantly, strategic trade-offs may be required. It is up to the leaders to make important decisions tailored to your sector that may require trade-offs. These trade-offs would depend on your sustainability vision, mission, and goals, plus anticipated developments in the macro environment and your respective industries balanced with commercial obligations. Thirdly, getting the timing right. Mass market adoption of most new technologies require an average of 30 to 40 years. The technologies required to enable energy transition, however, may be reaching inflection points soon, and different technologies are becoming available and commercially viable as we speak at different stages. A comprehensive strategic framework, such as a capabilities-driven strategy complemented by financial projections that clearly shows financial impact, are important to better prepare a company to remain competitive and be ahead of the curve. Next, a cross-functional team is required to implement sustainability in any organization. To implement sustainability effectively in any organization requires a cross-functional team, as sustainability initiatives cut across various aspects of the organization that impacts multiple departments and functions. This is essential for successful transition and implementation. As transition can be complex and multi-layered, it helps to facilitate change management, alignment with business goals and strategies, data sharing and reporting, resource optimization, and to work towards one vision. A holistic approach to the entire ecosystem. Change management is definitely essential for this complex and long transformation in businesses and operations. To achieve net zero, we need to foster a more human-centered change management approach to transition planning, such as providing an approach that envisions and develops strategies for a future we want to live in, instead of a future based on metrics and historical data. This is a significant change in many industrial models and businesses are experiencing. Next, on just transition or just pathways. Leaders definitely need to assess the need to balance the environmental impact with commercial feasibility, impact to all stakeholders while transitioning towards a net zero economy. This transition should include social inclusivity, contribution to sustainable employment, development of resilient communities to create a more sustainable global economy. Finally, very importantly, making the math work. In this collective race towards net zero economy, debt and equity financing need to be balanced. Currently, different companies have different investor value propositions with different implied balances of growth, risk, and returns. Hence, companies would need to assess how to balance shareholder returns against their investments for the transition. For example, decarbonizing of existing brownfields can help extend the lifespan and retain strong profits. The profits in return can then be reinvested in green projects or, for example, renewable energy. The role of carbon markets is also crucial, with a strong emphasis on credible projects that lower emissions in a resilient and responsible way. So those are the key takeaways for businesses that we have come up with, and that's all for the ESG Roundup this time. See you soon. Thank you.